This is Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. Today I'm excited to give you an inside look at a part of the mobility mosaic we haven't really talked about much on Transit Unplugged, and that is medical assistance transportation. As you know, it's a big part of our communities in providing transportation for folks with low income to medical appointments. And there are millions of trips provided on medical assistance transportation each year across the United States. And today we talk to the CEO of the largest provider of those trips, LogistiCare Solutions. His name, Carter Pate. You may remember him when he was CEO of MV Transportation, the largest American-owned public transportation contracting company, headquartered in Dallas, Texas, and now he's interim CEO of Providence and LogistiCare Solutions. I recently sat down with him in Dallas and talked about his experiences not only in these two roles, but in a number of other big positions, including he's retired, but he was at PwC, their global managing partner for healthcare and government contracting, and he's on a number of other boards. I talked to him about what it takes to lead billion-dollar organizations, some about his history in the contracted transportation industry and his role at MV, where it really was my boss back when I worked for them last decade or so in Washington, D.C. area. And he talks deeply about new technology and new approaches to providing better transportation for folks on medical assistance transportation. I think you'll find this a very interesting look inside the career and legacy of one of the giants of our industry and a take on medical assistance transportation and where it's going and how it integrates with public transportation on this special episode of Transit Unplugged.
What does it mean to be a successful public transit agency? What are you doing to lead the way? It's time to learn from the top transit professionals in North America. This is Transit Unplugged with your host, Paul Comfort.
I'm Paul Comfort. Welcome to another edition of Transit Unplugged. And today we take a turn into the world of medical assistance transportation. It's one of the most important features of mobility in the United States, but we haven't really had a guest on to talk about it. And I'm excited today to have with us Carter Pate, who has a long background in public transportation and healthcare. And we're in Dallas, Texas with him. Thanks for being with us today, Carter.
Glad to be with you, Paul.
Carter and I go back a ways. When I worked at MV Transportation, he was the CEO of the company back then, and we always put him way up on a pedestal because he is one of the sharpest guys in the business, and I still consider him that. So why don't you tell us some about your background, how you ended up where you're at today, Carter?
Well, by education, I am an accountant, a licensed CPA. Spent the bulk of my career at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is the largest accounting and consulting firm in the world. Toward the latter part of my career, I was the U.S. and global healthcare leader, which also involved large-scale contracts with states, municipalities, governments around the world. So the healthcare side of my background, and probably more importantly, the government contracting side, was what opened the door for the transport when I retired at PricewaterhouseCoopers back years ago.
Okay. And so how long were you there at PwC?
I'm going to guess close to about 20 years. Pricewaterhouse bought my consulting firm, Pate Stone.
Okay.
And so I became a direct admit partner and then worked my way up onto the management committee of running the U.S. There were about 7 or 8 of us. And then later I moved into the global organization and became one of the industry leaders of healthcare and government worldwide.
Wow. And then what'd you do after that?
Well, I was about to retire. In the big 4 firms, mandatory retirement is 60 years of age. And you know that when you go in, that on your 60th birthday, that happens to coincide with your last day. And so I was, at the time, I was probably about 57 or so, and a headhunter called about the opportunity to be CEO in MV Transportation, which was headquartered in California. And I had an interest in it after listening to it and went and interviewed with the owners and founders.
Alex and Faison Lottie?
That's right.
Yep.
Alex Lottie, one of the giants of the industry. And we had a good conversation, but I did not see myself living in Northern California. So we sort of parted ways, and I thanked him for the interview, and Faison was wonderful in the interview. I remember her being so nice, along with Alex. And a couple days later, John Monson, who is another giant in this industry and well known, called me and said, what if we moved the headquarters? We've been thinking about that anyway, because we're now bi-coastal and no longer a West Coast company. And MV had won some major contracts throughout the East Coast. And so a central location appealed to them, and that's the rest of the history. And then I accepted, left PricewaterhouseCoopers to become the CEO of MV and moved the headquarters to Dallas, Texas.
MV, a lot of people know, but probably a lot don't, is the largest American contract transportation company in our public transit sphere. So you are leading the number one company that does this. And tell us some about your experiences there.
Oh, it was a terrific experience, and I would have to say that it was because of the people. I don't think I've ever worked with better people in my life. They were all mission-minded. I learned a lot from the people. I think of the days of Kevin Klika and others that spent a lot of time with me, John Monson, of understanding the fundamentals. That mission focused for the most vulnerable side of our population was one that really resonated with me, and to this day, that you have to have a genuine care and love for these people and their needs to be able to access facilities and care. And so out of that, Alex and Faison Lottie built a business, and that business became the giant it is today of MV Transportation.
That's something. And its headquarters still here in Dallas. I just drove by their headquarters yesterday.
Yes, as I understand it, is still doing well, and they're still winning contracts and still have friends there to this day.
That's something. So how long were you there at MV?
I was there a little over 3 years, and then retired from that business and started entering into a professional director of different public companies, which had been my background at PricewaterhouseCoopers thereafter.
And so what are you doing now?
Well, right now I'm the interim CEO of another public company called Providence Service Corp. And directly in the transport space, we own 100% of LogistiCare, which is headquartered in Atlanta. And I'm also the interim CEO of LogistiCare. And LogistiCare is the largest non-emergency medical transporter in the United States. It's commonly referred to as NEMT in the transport industry, but a bit different from the paratransit, fixed route, and corporate shuttle school bus business, kind of in a sector of its own.
So I want to go back to MV, and maybe you could compare and contrast the public transit, paratransit world versus a non-emergency medical transportation, kind of for the uninitiated. What's the difference and the roles of each one in our industry sphere?
In the paratransit and fixed route business, your clients are going to be they will most likely own their own vehicles, and that you will route and maintain the vehicle, furnish the driver, and do everything other than own the asset. And that sprang up because of the DOT funding mechanism, where our tax dollars, through maybe either gasoline taxes or in some cases sales taxes, fund the purchase of the vehicle, but not necessarily the operating dollars. And so ticket sales and other taxes form the basis for that industry. And it is heavily dominated by 3 or 4 major players in the United States, some of which are headquartered offshore, as you know.
Let's just name them out for folks. It would be Transdev, First Transit, MV, Keolis, some of the big players, National Express.
Absolutely.
Right.
You've named the bulk. That's probably 85% of the market share in the U.S., as I understand it or recall. And the NEMT business is in a different sector. We have a significant size in that market. And
you're the market leader, right?
We are, by a factor of probably 3 or 4 times the size of the closest competitor. We are public, so I'm not giving you any information that's private. We'll do probably $1.6 billion, $1.7 billion in revenue this year. We're in 49 states. I have about 4,000 employees, headquartered out of Atlanta.
And taking people to doctor's appointments.
That's exactly right. It is a benefit of Medicaid, which services the most vulnerable part of our society. That is a government-sponsored, really a safety net in healthcare in the United States. And then we also have the very fast component of Medicare Advantage, which is probably my fastest growing sector, which is way more than double-digit growth, compared to a growth of 3 to 5% in Medicaid.
Okay, tell us about
two different programs.
Yeah, what is that? Because I'm not sure if I understand.
So Medicare Advantage is a supplement policy that you get guys like me that got a little gray hair that are on Medicare. They're looking for a supplement policy, and that during the supplement policy, different MCOs or care organizations will offer benefits, and one of the benefits is transport to the medical provider. So to the doctor, home from the doctor as a benefit. And so our job is to figure out the most efficient way to get them to that appointment and then get them back home. And like anything else in the transport, it's all about efficiency and value of the dollar.
And that's for elderly folks, people that are, of course, I'm getting close to that age. I don't consider elderly, but over maybe 65 when you're on Medicare, Medicare, and the other is Medicaid, which is for low income.
That's
correct.
And
you're doing both of those. Now, is the Medicare one, is that administered through the federal government or is it pushed down through the states?
Both Medicaid and Medicare are federal programs administered by the states.
Okay. So the concept, I guess, being that it's a lot cheaper to get someone to the doctor to pay for their transportation than to maybe have them stuck in a nursing home or stuck in a hospital for long periods of time. So it's a lower cost, more efficient way of doing things, providing care.
Yes, you're right on point. Is the efficiency of the doctors in a Medicare and Medicaid payer scenario is you want them back to back. And so if you have 3 or 4 no-shows due to transportation, the efficiency model is broken then, and you're selling time for a living in theory. And so these are non-billable hours. So it becomes very important, one, for the efficiency of the model to get them to the doctor, and number 2, for their own health and well-being.
Right.
That you don't want a simple solution for an illness to be magnified where they later show up in the emergency room because the level of care wasn't administered early on.
And now they're ended up costing the taxpayers a lot more as a result of that. So do the clients have to pay a fare to ride the service, or is it normally completely covered by the insurance?
It's generally covered by the insurance, as opposed to paratransit or fixed route where there may be a fare component, depending on how the cities have set up the service or the county has set up the service.
Right. That's good. So what's the model that most of these big providers like LogistiCare are using? Are you running your own vehicles? Are you having brokers? You're a broker and you have other providers. Tell us how that all works.
Well, we have hundreds and hundreds of contracts in 49 states that I may have said earlier. And in that model, we are very careful some of them are capitated and some are non-capitated, and we will bid on those contracts either by the state administered or the MCO, which is Managed Care Organization, will bid on those contracts just like they do in the paratransit or fixed route industry, and there's an award. There are times where the MCOs have an immediate need and that they can go directly because the contracts as administered by the state call for maximum efficiency. So in their wisdom, if they can feel they're getting high value for it, that sometimes we're able to contract directly outside of the bid system. But that's a little more rare than you would imagine.
And when you say capitated, tell us what that means.
Well, basically, they pay a fee multiplied times how many members there are in a state or a service area. And that's a flat fee you get. And anyone that wants a ride, you're to furnish the ride. So statistically, you're doing a lot of homework to understand what is the volume, what is the need, and how often do they travel. And you try to nail the frequency and the amount of usage, and then you bid on an estimated fee. Sometimes that works, and other times you can have a disastrous situation, i.e. the opioid crisis.
Right, okay.
Has raised its sad head in the United States, where we've got certain states that have a full-blown opioid crisis, which requires, in some cases, daily visits for treatment. And that frequency, it can destroy your model. And then you got to go put your heads back together and see if there's a new meeting of the mind because of the frequency.
So you and your company really then have to be experts in efficiency when it comes to providing transportation and forecasting.
I would doubt there's no one that you haven't interviewed on your podcast that isn't an expert in that, or they probably have got a pretty short career.
Yeah.
That is the rule of the day. You got to understand your numbers. And often in this business, as I learned early on, is the one that makes the biggest mistake wins the contract.
You don't want to be you don't always want to be that one that wins.
Well, sometimes that's the luck of the draw, but sometimes it's not all that seems. Sometimes there are bid mistakes made and assumptions that don't hold water. And someone can win a contract and then immediately regret it 6 months to a year later. So there's plenty of those stories to go around in our industry among your listeners, I'm sure.
Yep. So let's talk about some of the challenges that you face in operating and maybe some of the victories that you've had. Any stories or thoughts you want to tell us about that, either at MV or here? You're a veteran with we just had breakfast together and had some great stories. Which ones can you tell us?
Well, I don't know if the innocents want to be called out, but there are quite a lot of stories in the industries, some of which are mostly centered around poor behavior that goes on. I particularly remember in the school bus business, and you'll remember this from your own background of working with unions, is that I went to my first union negotiation and learned my lesson about parking in the parking lot without plenty of lights. I became fairly known for stopping by the franchise Rent-A-Wreck, and I would drive the car that was in the worst possible shape. And then usually after about 8 or 9 hours of going at it in pretty intense negotiations, I'd be treated to all 4 flat tires when I came out.
Oh, boy.
So, there's some funny things that just part of the business, but I learned not to drive my Hertz to the meeting. Don't drive an Avis or a Hertz to the meeting. So there's some funny stories that have happened over the years, all of which really form great memories about the transport industry and the need to serve the public.
I rarely get an opportunity to interview someone with the leadership background that you've had in the public companies and public sector. Tell us some of what you consider some of the secrets of success for someone who might be listening to this show today of rising in leadership and wherever they're at in the industry. What are the keys to help you rise to the top to become, you're one of the most venerated CEOs in our industry. How did you get there? What are some lessons that you've learned that you can pass on?
I guess I would say that one of the things I try to keep in mind is never confuse effort with results. They're two different levels of thought. Going after with laser precision a goal and not trying to have too many. So many people try to fix too many things at one time, and being thoughtful and understanding in order what are the things that need the most attention and then give those the level of effort. Number 2, I would say being a CEO of, now this is my probably 3rd or 4th gig, is you lose control of your own schedule. And, people are always running in your office with their hair on fire about this, that, or the other. And as a CEO, you're responsible for setting direction and making sure there's a sense of purpose and what is your mission? Why are you there to exist? And getting that confidence in your own schedule of giving yourself time to think appropriately instead of running meeting to meeting where you're spending your day putting out fires. I was more successful in gaining control of my own schedule and setting the schedule so that I was willing to only entertain those type of fire moments several times a day, but I would try to control my schedule and through a series of discipline, make sure that I'm on mission, on target, and what was the original goal I set out for myself for the week. And then by Thursday or Friday, go back and reflect on what you wanted to accomplish at the beginning of the week, and then try to salvage the rest of your schedule and make sure that you achieve those goals. So that would be some of the things I think that are important as you go up to the top. And then lastly, when you start at the bottom, like I did, I was a dishwasher when I was 14, is don't ever lose sight of the importance of the people in your organization, whether it's your drivers or your dispatch or your call centers. Understand your mission and be among the people. That's where your money is made. In the transport business, pennies become nickels, nickels become dimes. And understanding how that works throughout your organization is going to be the key to your success. Getting out of the office is probably the most single important thing I do.
Okay, that's good. You've had experience at the top of publicly traded companies and you're on boards. A lot of our listeners are in the public sector. They're working for government agencies. Could you tell us some about what's important to big corporations? What are they trying to accomplish? These big companies like we talked about, TransDev, Keolis, MV, others. What's the key to success there? They're obviously they want to make money, right? But they understand that in order to make money, they have to do what? What are the keys to success for these big companies?
I think some people fail to understand their clients' needs. You cannot underestimate that in the public sector, they are mission driven.
Yes.
Okay? And in that mission, they want to execute with the best of us. These are some of America's most talented executives in the government sector.
Right. Like Gary Thomas, who we were just talking about here in Dallas.
Yes. My God, he's a legend here in Dallas.
Yeah.
And very thoughtful, will take the time to meet with anybody, a real successful executive. And I would tell you, trying to understand what their mission is and getting clarity of what do they want out or done this year. What's the number 1, 2, and 3 things they want to do? And then embracing their goals as your own will draw you into a partnership or a relationship that those bonds are not easily broken. So when there is a screw up, they know that you understand their mission, and they're far more willing to cut you some slack if you're on mission. It's when you put the bottom line ahead of the mission, then I think the corporate and governmental sector diverse, and each views the other doesn't understand what's important. So that would be the thing that was, as I look back over my career, of trying to make sure that all of the people that I have worked with understand what is that mission and why are we here.
That's good. Yeah. I always like to say that relationships are the grease that make the gears of commerce turn. So
so true.
Some things get grinding, and then you have a relationship because you have identified with them, and then that helps it be smoother a little bit. That's good. One other kind of just leadership question I was wondering about. So let's say you're CEO, like you are now. You're CEO of a company with thousands and thousands of employees. What's the most effective way to communicate? The good book says, without a progressive vision, we dwell carelessly, right? So you want to have a progressive vision for your staff, and you want to lay out, here's our direction, because you're the out front. How do you get that message really to be grasped and understood by the staff so that they will do it even when they're not being looked at? The Hawthorne effect, right? People's behavior changes when they're being observed. You can't always watch these employees who are out in the field. So how are you getting them to accomplish the mission that you want them to?
Well, the modern technology makes that a lot easier to communicate. So I would answer it in twofold, one of which what I do, I've got a call, we call it an all-hands call coming up Thursday that will be done on video, where it'll be a live feed on the internet, as well as you can call into it. And this is my chance to talk to my employees for the month, Everyone is invited. We try to set it at a responsible time of the day where they can see it coming and work around their own appointments if this is a priority to them to listen. And I will convey what are the messages that I want to get all the way down to throughout the organization. So I'll go through the financials. Since we are public, I'll share that information right down to the detail. Then we'll move into operational. We'll move into safety issues. We'll move into mission of new product or new introduction. We'll have a talk about new wins and the importance. But this is how I communicate through the right to the every corner of the business.
A dispatcher somewhere. And
they can listen too. So I don't have to have my message filtered.
Okay.
And then we do the courageous thing, which is let them queue up and ask questions on a live mic.
Oh, wow.
So you can have some interesting questions when people feel at home.
Yes.
We usually start looking for written questions about a week early. So I'll, when there's a little bit of silence, I'll ask to reach out. And then last we have other communication with email, birthday cards that I learned from Alex Lottie to write a birthday card to everyone on their birthday.
That's right. You used to send me one every year. I remember
there's other ways to communicate your message, and then get out of the office, which is the second piece, and then have a town hall at the local operation so they can feel and sense your sincerity and love for mission.
That's good. So based on where you're at now, what do you see happening in the future for medical assistance, transportation, and the Medicaid side of things, Medicare as well? Do you see continued federal funding making this a priority? Do you see new models coming? I mean, is there anything in the future you see that you'd like to share with us?
Well, it's all going to be tied to the political landscape. As you know, there are some candidates running for office with Medicare for all.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. So a single payer is something that could be very costly, but we're one of because I ran healthcare worldwide, we're among the last countries on the planet that have a complete private system with a quasi-government support for those with the safety net need or those that are over 65. So I'm keeping a close eye on that. What will it mean? We're fortunate because we already deal with government payers, so it wouldn't be a huge model disruption for us to see an increase in the role of single payer. As far as the consolidation front for us, moving into a complete, I'll call it one call type system where MCOs want to be able to be more data driven and completely wring out the last of the efficiencies. So when my 62 million people that we carry every year to the doctor come out with a prescription in their hand, can we help them fill the prescription or durable medical equipment called DME? Do they need a walker? Do they need a wheelchair? Do they need crutches? What else do they need in order to recover appropriately? Pulling all that together as a one-stop shop will be a vision that everyone will want to watch in the future. So that would be a little bit into my crystal ball.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I could see that happening. Yep. I guess last question, as you look over your career, besides just the leadership thing, is there any other kind of lessons you've learned or thoughts you'd have for the thousands of people that listen to this show that are in the mobility business? That's, as you know, we're changing the name. It's not public transportation anymore. Now it's mobility because it includes Uber and Lyft and Medicaid, all these people where cities like Dallas are trying to be the mobility aggregator, right? So they're pulling together all of that. So in this big mobility sphere, any other thoughts for people as we continue to move into now the 2020s?
I think as I look back over my own career, the most exciting years are actually in front of us, not behind us. Is with the introduction of artificial intelligence and the driverless vehicles from LTL to cargo transport, where transcontinental without a driver's coming into play. I saw some of the tests that were going out on I-40, which is a coast-to-coast highway throughout the United States that I saw testing beginning, to some of the exciting things that Lyft and Uber, who are our partners in our business, are doing. So all of that artificial intelligence is going to be a journey the apps have taken on, where self-diagnostic healthcare integration with transport to the doctor. Talking a little bit in code here so I don't get into my own corporate strategy, but so, I think the next 10 years are going to be the most exciting times in the mobility industry, as further refinements on how we attack the efficiency out of the model and get people from A to B in a consolidated strategy, so that we're taking different modes of transport. And Gary is doing that here with opening up the transportation from the DFW airport and the rail. And then we got the high-speed rail going in to Houston, coming in hopefully in the next 2 years. They'll start that up. So I would tell you, if you're entering this industry, it's going to be a wild ride.
Well, and thank you for the leadership you've given over the past so many years for us, and that you continue to provide in the mobility industry. And thanks for being with us today as our guest on Transit Unplugged.
Thank you, Paul. It was good to see you again.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Transit Unplugged, powered by Trapeze Group. To stay up to date, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, or join the conversation at transitunplugged.com. Thanks for listening.